quickly go through the paper today. You will have a very short session today because there are not a lot of issues which I have to explain from my end. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Services exports cut the trade deficit by 9.4% in Q1. So what are the things you need to know here? The background. Trade deficit. What do you mean by trade deficit? Where will you know this term in external sector of economy, and what is the implication of having a trade deficit? Just go through these basics. You don't need to memorize, or you don't need to note down these numbers. Okay. Yeah. So briefly, this is the issue that you have to know. Protection of children from sexual offences, POCSO. And in this context, there is a recent judgment, right to privacy of adolescents. Right to privacy of adolescents. See, what is the background case here? This is about a minor who decided to marry a elder guy, a 14-year-old, 14-year-old girl. She decided to marry a 25-year-old guy. But the problem is, she is a minor, and she left the home. After some days, she was brought back, but again, at the age of 17, she left and married that person. This time, she even had a child with that person, but since she's less than 18, which is the legal age for marriage, the person, her husband, was prosecuted under the POCSO Act and was jailed. Now she is left with a baby, nobody to take care, stigma back home. Even at in-law's place, her mother-in-law is a cancer patient, and the entire scenario is a very troublesome one because she doesn't have any support, and she claims that this is a consensual relation. So the entire case is about how we have to deal with adolescent relations. Sometimes there is a possibility that it can be consensual. Now, Supreme Court had to intervene and see the paradigm change in how we approach this problem. On one hand, there is a debate that we have to come up with a blanket law so that it acts as a deterrence, so that we are not setting a wrong example. On the other hand, we have genuine cases like this. How do we deal with it? Supreme Court said that we have to deal with such kind of issues on a case-to-case basis. That is the entire argument of this article. So, this paragraph, this case exposes the fundamental tensions within the POCSO Act and ground realities of adolescent sexuality. There is an international convention called UN Convention on Rights of Children. This convention says that you should not criminalize adolescent sexual behavior. And based on the UN Convention on CRC, that is Rights of Children, where you have this, Supreme Court came up with this right to privacy of adolescents. I just wanted you to take a note of this because fundamental rights is one topic on which current affairs will be important. So just keep a tab on this topic. You might have further some more articles. We will see if there is a counter view, etc. Okay, this is the first issue. Same thing, extinguish multilateralism, India-US relation and the role of India in the evolving world order. It's not the first time we are discussing this topic. Every single day we are almost having the same topic. So how do we deal with this? Okay, what is the point made here? US is no longer having the lead position as the order. So so India should take so US is no longer having the strategic advantage it has. So India should act as the leader of the global south. This is our wish. But what kind of mechanisms do we really have? Do we have any actual points to make this wish a reality? This article gives us 5 points. So these 5 points are very important for you. Please note them down. On what kind of areas can you actually work on so that this wish of multilateralism driven global world order, it's not working. So if India were to be a global south leader, what are the things that we have to do? Point number one. Point number one is coming from a realization that the global south, which is the developing world or the underdeveloped world, the common agenda for these countries can no longer be about economic aid. It is not just about money. There are many more issues. For example, climate. These countries are facing the maximum pressure when it comes to climate change. On issues like that, India should take up ownership and act as a leader for negotiating. But the problem is, UN-led negotiations are not just working. Because thanks to the transactional diplomacy of US, which has been responsible for destabilizing this present rules-based world order, UN-like platforms are just not working. Okay. So we need to figure out how multilateralism, meaning how one country engaging with multiple countries, how should it work? We have to figure out. And India should lead that. Because even regional blocks like BRICS cannot act as a replacement for a global body like UN. Okay? That is the first point. Second one, the challenge for a continental size Atmanirbhar Bharat. This is the strategy that the writer suggests that we should be taking. See, how did China get so much advantage because of its Belt and Road Initiative? You know this Belt and Road Initiative, right? It is an infrastructure-led growth strategy. This infrastructure-led growth strategy is not yielding the kind of results it actually thought because of geopolitical tensions. And the reason why this is not working because of geopolitical tensions is because of the very nature or the very ambition of China. It is coercive. As opposed to China, if India wants to go ahead with this infrastructure-led strategy, we have to see convergence. We should not coerce. So if India's wish is to have Atmanirbharta, okay, why not make other regional players, a party to this strategy? For example, you have ASEAN. If you want to include ASEAN also as a part of this, you will not only empower them, make them a part of the China plus one strategy. What is China plus one strategy? if a company wants to move out of China to diversify the risk, and if a country wants to be a part of that diversification strategy, we need to leverage that. When I say China plus one, that plus one refers to the opportunity we have to replace China as a part of the global value chain. Is India leveraging that? Not yet. How do we leverage it? Through continental Atmanirbharta strategy, where even regional partners are made a part of this self-reliance. Not only us, they should also be a part of this. So this is the answer for the deglobalization. Again, we have to move towards regional globalization. Start with a small pocket and then increase the size. Start from neighborhood. Start with East Asia. Plan for such a strategy where you are not only aligning your needs with the country but also of your regional partners. That is the continental Atmanirbharta strategy. Next is, because of the present tariffs imposed by the US, we are losing a lot of revenue. For example, steel. How do we compensate that? The article writer suggests that just like how China was willing to take a hit and work on the long-term planning, even we should take that hit and invest. That same steel demand should be catered to by investing in domestic infrastructure. The steel companies should be compensated by investing in and planning for domestic infrastructure projects, and ensure that we are no longer depending on exports only. A skewed dependence. For example, if a steel company is producing 100 units and its survival depends on exports, let's say 80 units is for exports, only 20 is for India. We need to change that proportion by planning for infrastructure projects and a capex-led growth. Capex-led growth. There is a concept called front loading. Front loading means the government itself will start investing heavily in infrastructure. Later, private investment will follow. Okay. In May 2025, there is a survey. There is a survey from the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation to check if this theory is actually working in the case of India or not. In the last few years, as a part of our budget, we are investing heavily through capital expenditure. Okay. So, are we witnessing a growth in confidence from the private sector? The survey says not exactly. The private sector is not following the government sector because there is still global uncertainty. The wars that are happening, the price crash, all these factors are still making the companies to hesitate and invest in our economy. How do we fix that? By still continuing this capex and giving confidence on the consumer demand of this economy. We should not stop just because the private sector is stopping, because there is no other alternative. That is what the article writer also says. Third, the intrinsic strength is being at the forefront of the fourth industrial revolution. What is the strategic advantage we have? Like we discussed, service sector is the backbone of our economy, and within that IT exports. Now we have the AI revolution, artificial intelligence, which is at the forefront of Industrial Revolution 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution, which is transforming the economy. we have to leverage that. We have to work on empowering and creating global products. Creating global products. That is the next lever. Fourth, the world over, military doctrines are being rewritten because this is the age of autonomous weapons, drones. For the first time since independence, India is in a position to be a global leader in all the domains because we have technological prowess. Combine this with our ambition to be the global south leader. We have a very good advantage. So this is the fourth point. And finally, fifth point is India is already revisiting the way it has framed broader issues left over from colonial era. Meaning, I told you, on August 15th, 2022, our Prime Minister came up with a set of 5 woes called Panch Pran. In one of the woe is that we have to get rid of colonial mentality. Meaning, we have to get rid of any element of thought which makes us feel inferior than the West. We need to reconstruct and reframe how we view a certain issue. Since India is already doing that, we should also do that in our bid to be the global force where multilateralism is fading away and assert its cultural identity. When you combine all of these elements and make them a part of the foreign policy, India will truly become the leader that it aspires to. That is what this article is saying. Clear? Please read this article. Contesting the future of forest governance. See, this is basically the same problem. It's about power control. Background: Forest Rights Act 2006. So, the importance of this Forest Rights Act 2006 is that it democratizes forest governance by empowering Gram Sabhas. Okay? And there is one more provision: community forest rights. So just basically what you're supposed to do is go to your traditional textbooks, whatever textbook you're following for environment, and read this act. Okay? And now after reading this, you will realize that Gram Sabha is the most empowered stakeholder in this framework. This is local governance. The present article is about Chhattisgarh Forest Department trying to take away that power by centralizing all the permissions on even community forest rights or community forest projects like timber. This is a rollback of the very spirit of this act. So to understand this article, which is fairly straightforward and self-explanatory, all you need to do is go back to this act from your environment textbooks and then come back and read this. Overall funda here is that in a bid to give rights to the forest dwellers and empowering the Gram Sabha, we moved away from the old forest governance architecture where forest officers are so powerful that they exploited the tribals. In a very poor state like Chhattisgarh, this act is all the more important, where tribals are very vulnerable. Now, the present attempt to reshape the forest governance will roll back the intent of this act and again put the power back in the hands of the forest department officials, which is against the spirit of the law, and therefore this needs to stop. So read this article entirely. It is self-explanatory, but before that you have to read this act. Clear? Okay, moving on. How is global shipping trying to decarbonize? When I say decarbonize, what does it mean? Decarbonization refers to a strategy where we are trying to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by relooking at how we are utilizing our present fuels. What is the current carbon footprint? Meaning, what is the total greenhouse gas emissions or carbon emissions? Okay, total carbon emissions that are coming out of a economic activity. Let's say if X is the total amount of carbon that is emitted by the shipping industry, a decarbonization strategy will try to make it 0.5x or 0.1x or completely remove it over a period of time. The intent to move in this direction is decarbonization. Why is this important? Because in the absence of this strategy, climate change will happen and it will have an impact on every aspect of our life. Therefore, this decarbonization agenda is extremely important. Where will you see this? In our net zero goals. What do you mean by net zero? Any idea? Net zero means our economic activity will release some carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. But if that economic activity technology is changed, or if our economic activity is in such a way that whatever is being released is absorbed again back, you will have a net zero emissions. Okay, this is net zero target, and India aims to have that net zero by 2070. Okay, for this India adopted something called LTLEDS, long term low emissions developmental strategy. You can go to the Telegram channel and just check for this LTLEDs. You will get the necessary information. Clear? Under that strategy, shipping industry is one such industry. So this article is extremely important for prelims. Please do not ignore this article at all, because environment related questions in prelims examination will come from newspapers, because the difference in CSE and IFOS is environment, science and tech. And both these areas you will get questions from newspapers. When you are talking about this particular article, we are talking about a fuel. Traditionally, what fuel are we using? It can be diesel, it can be petrol or whatever. The problem with the present fuels is that they are very polluting. What are the alternative fuels we have? This article suggests that we have many alternative fuels like hydrogen, methanol, ammonia. Okay, and the problem with hydrogen, even though it is very energy dense, is that the cost is very high. And since the cost is very high, it is very difficult to invest in that. Alternatively, you have e-methanol and ammonia based fuels, which are still costly, but it's possible. And we have to become a global hub for this kind of fuels. That is the strategy we need to adopt. Alternatively, we have Singapore, which is competing for the same. But India has every possible ingredient to compete with Singapore. Singapore is just like a city. If they can do it, why can't we? We have ports. We have the necessary technology. And more than anything, we have the need. We have the need to move away from these fossil fuels because nearly 85% of our energy needs are through imports. If we invest in these alternative fuels, you will see some, extra revenue or a shift in how we will engage with different players across the world, because we will no longer depend on these countries for our fuel. So we have to start that energy transition journey, and this article is about that. Okay, here you will talk about the practical difficulties in green hydrogen production. What is green hydrogen, etc.? I've made many posts on my Telegram channel. Just search green hydrogen, and you can even search shipping. Just search the word shipping, you will get many articles. I'll post in sometime in the evening also, and link all of those articles together. Extremely important article. Okay, please don't miss this. Okay, that's it for the day. Other articles are not that important. Clear?